I would like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board this October 6, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. Nadia, can we have a roll call, please?
Yep. Don Black,
Here.
Pat Darcy, Raymond Layton,
Here.
Ann Shout,
And they here?
Yes, here.
Okay.
Marshall Ballard,
Here.
Hear me.
Margie Dunn,
Here.
Marcus Simmons,
Present.
Travis Oakley,
Here.
Sonny Aluso.
Sonny? Here, okay.
Yep.
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
Very good. On to new business. Nolan Commercial Contractors with Thomas Engineering are requesting final subdivision plan approval for Lakeview Phase 1, a proposed 36-lot plan unit development. This section of the multi-phase development is located on a combined 16.82 acres in residential R8 residential district. This site is located west of Old Airport Road, that is in Ward 3. Staff review, please.
Okay. So this is just a review. The applicant is Nolan Commercial Contractors and Thomas Engineering. The project name is Lakeview Phase 1, which was formerly Hardy Farms Phase 2, Section A. It's west of Old Airport Road. It's in the R8 residential district, and it's approximately 16.82 acres. The plan received preliminary approval in January of 2019, and the average lot size is 10,661 square feet. The total length of streets is 2,300 linear feet, and the total common area is approximately 4.58 acres. And they will have City of Newbury utilities. This is just a satellite view of where the properties are going to be. It's just this area right here, I believe. And then here is a image of the plans. So staff is recommending, since they received preliminary subdivision approval in January 2019, we have reviewed the subdivision and find that the project meets all of the requirements of the land use ordinance. And we're recommending approval of the subdivision, and the bond has been approved by city departments, so public works, water and sewer, everything like that. And that's it.
Okay, so what I saw on the graphic was that it was contingent when the graphic was made, but it's now been approved, so the town attorney, the city attorney is satisfied.
Yeah, that's correct.
Are there any questions from the members of this board at this point?
So, if I understood that correctly, the bond has been received now? Is that correct? Okay.
It has.
Perfect.
To the satisfaction of the city attorney.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The common areas that are on there, is that for the entire project or just for this phase?
That's just for this phase.
So each phase has that acreage or more as a common area?
Yep, I believe so.
Is that?
So this phase in particular has that, so I think the other phase also have a different.
Yeah, it would be likely
Yeah.
proportional to the amount of acreage in the phase.
Yeah.
Are there any questions from our remote members tonight, Sonia, Nan, and Mark?
No, I'm good.
Does the applicant wish to address the zoning board?
No, sir, not unless you have any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Having heard none, are any members of the public wish to address this development who are in favor of the development? Are there any members of the public who wish to address this board who are against the development? Having heard none, are there any members of this board who would like to present a motion to approve the item before us with the knowledge that the bond has been approved? by the city attorney.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, we approve the final subdivision plan for Lakeview Phase 1 as presented.
We have a motion, is that motion seconded?
Second.
We have a motion, the motion's been seconded. All those in favor of adopting approval of,
Sorry, we're gonna have to do a roll call for votes.
oh, we have to go,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
no problem. Don Black,
yes,
Raymond Layton,
Yes?
Ann Shout,
Ann Sharp, do you approve it? Can you repeat yourself, please?
Yes.
Okay,
Marshall Ballard,
Yes.
Margie Dunn,
Yes.
Martha Simmons,
Yes.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Sonia Luzo.
Yes.
the motion passes unanimously. The second item of business we have is again from Nolan Commercial Contractors, Thomas Engineering, are requesting final subdivision plan for the approval of Lakeview Phase 2, a proposed 15-lot planned unit development. This section of the multi-phase development is located on a combined 24.09 acres in R8 Residential District. This site is located west of Old Airport Road, also in Ward 3. The staff review, please.
So once again, this is Nolan Commercial Contractors and Thomas Engineering, Lakeview Phase 2, so formerly Hardy Farms Phase 2, Section B. The current zoning is R8 Residential District, and it's 24.09 plus or minus acres. The preliminary subdivision approval, again, happened in January 2019, with the average lot size being 13,405 square feet. The total length of streets is 758 linear feet, and the total common area for this area is going to be 18.48 acres. Again, this is going to be City of New Bern Utilities. Here is another satellite image of the site, so that this bit is here in particular. And here are the plans. Lakeview Phase 2 received preliminary subdivision approval in January of 2019. Staff has reviewed the proposed subdivision plan and finds the project meets all of the requirements of the land use ordinance. And we are recommending approval of the subdivision. Again, the bond has already been approved by the city attorney and city staff.
Are there any questions from members of this board for the staff? We do understand that despite the graphic, the bond has now been approved by the city attorney and his staff.
What were the lot sizes of these?
I think it's about half, right?
I didn't see them up there.
It's 13,000.
13. Okay.
Are there any other questions? Do any of our remote members have any questions?
None here. Nope.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to address?
No, sir.
Are there any members of the public that would like to speak in favor of this development? Are there any members of the public that would like to speak against this application? Having heard none, at this point, the chair would like to entertain a motion to approve item B as described and as discussed.
I'll make a motion that we approve the final subdivision plan for Lakeview Phase 2 as presented.
We have a motion. Is that motion seconded?
A second.
We have a motion is seconded. We will have a roll call now to adopt this item B.
Okay. Don Black,
Yes?
Raymond Layton,
Yes.
Ann Shout,
And?
Yes.
Marshall Ballard,
Yes.
Yes.
Margie Dunn,
Yes.
Martha Simmons,
Margaret? I mean, yeah, he said yes.
Travis
Yes.
Oakley,
Yes.
Aluso.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. On to item C is consideration of an application to rezone one parcel totaling .45 acres from R15 Residential District to R10 Residential District. This parcel is located at 3205 Country Club Road and is further identified as Craven County Parcel ID 8-056-001, located in Ward 3. Staff review, please.
Okay. So the applicants are Samantha and Wendell Wright, and Brian McCracken is representing them today. The location is 3205 Country Club Road. The existing zoning is R15, and the proposed zoning is going to be R10. The size of the lot is .45 acres, and it's currently vacant land. So here's a satellite view of that property. And here is a Google Maps view of it. So currently within the R15 zone, it's designed to accommodate low-density single-family dwellings with 15,000 square foot lot minimums. And then the proposed zoning is R10, so that's designed to accommodate single and two-family homes with 10,000 square foot lots required for one-family dwellings, and then an additional 5,000 square feet for every additional unit. So the allowed uses in the R10 district, so there's single-family detached residential, single-family attached residential, and duplexes. So surrounding zoning is all R15 apart from to the west, which is Trent Woods. So Stacey Newbern will provide all utilities to the area. The 2010 Camera Regional Land Use Plan classifies the area as developed. So the environment, it has medium suitability for development in that particular area, and it is in the 100-year floodplain. So staff recommendation, the proposal to rezone the subject parcel to R10 Residential District is consistent with the character of the adjacent land uses and zoning classifications. Staff has found the proposed rezoning to be in the public interest and consistent with the Stacey land use and transportation plans due to the close proximity to other residentially zoned parcels. Staff recommends approval of the requested rezoning. And that's it for me.
Are there any questions from the members concerning item C before us?
Has this lot already started being cleared?
Yes,
Yes, I thought it had.
that Google Maps was,
What's
I
the,
don't know when it was shot.
Yes, Sonny.
do we know why they want to rezone, do we know why they want to rezone it?
Well, the applicant is here, and we can ask him.
I represent the applicant.
Okay, the representative of the applicant is here, Sonny.
They,
Okay, good enough.
the owner intends on moving here to build a 3-bedroom home for themselves for retirement, and they'd like to build a house next door for their mother-in-law.
That's going to be on a different parcel, the mother-in-law?
Currently, the lot is 20,000 square feet, and the idea is to build one for them, and once they think the mother-in-law sees this house, they'd like her to move next door.
And that's going to be in a different parcel?
Correct.
Okay.
The land will be subdivided eventually.
Okay, Sonny, I don't know if you heard everything, but the parcel will be subdivided. Okay, very good.
And I understand, that, you know, it's 20,000 square feet, he only needs 10 for one, and then he needs 5 more, so he's got plenty of acres.
It'd be 10 for one, 10 for the other. So they'd all be consistent.
It's going to be bifurcated essentially into two equivalent 10,000 square feet parcels.
Okay. That was good, thank you.
Okay, yes, please.
Is that land low? Is that flood zone?
It is It is low, and there's going to be a substantial amount of dirt that's going to have to be brought in.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with, there's a house under construction
Yes, Shepherd's.
right now, what is referred to on the point in Trent Shores, and the Arthur family has brought in roughly 30 loads of dirt. We're anticipating somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 loads of dirt per lot. So we have to bring in a lot of dirt.
So in doing that, the fall off, how's that going to affect the properties around it?
The rear the rear lot is owned by Bill Ward, and is he's trying. I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but Bill intends to give this to it's not buildable. Beyond it, there are wetlands, if that makes, I don't know if we can bring the map up. So how does that affect, may I go up to the elevator?
Google Maps or?
No, that would probably work.
All this unbuildable and is landlocked. There's some land that's approximately right here that is buildable, but you'd have to get to it either from Farrier Circle or from Allen Drive. But this lot right here is higher than this lot, which I own, these two lots. And so the idea is to just fill in the front here and fill in the back enough so that it is equal to this height, so that the natural flow of the water does go this way. So I just see it as the water's going that way anyway. You're just making this usable on the back side right here for possible driveway or something. I don't know. So, there you go. Any other questions while I'm here?
Are there any further questions from the members here? Are there any questions from members remote?
No.
Normally we go to the applicant, but the applicant already spoke about that. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak in favor of this development? Having seen none, heard none, are there any members of the public that wish to speak against this proposal? Having heard none, we will return it back to the board. We had a discussion about that. If there are no further questions, I would like to entertain a motion to approve item C as it is before us.
Yeah, we're recommending approval. This has to go to the Board of Aldermen for a rezoning.
Yeah, this is as Raymond noted, this is a rezoning application, and we will be recommending for approval of the application that goes before the Board of Aldermen. Do we have a motion for that?
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the rezoning of this parcel to from R15 to R10 residential district.
We have a motion approving the application for rezoning from R15 to R10 before us. Is that motion seconded?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
We have a motion, we have the motion seconded. I would like to have a roll call vote, please.
Don Black,
Yes?
Raymond Lason,
Yes.
Ann Schaff,
And
Marshall Ballard,
Yes.
Margie Dunn,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Sonny Lizzo.
Yes.
we have a motion, and we have the motion passes unanimously. On to item D. Item D is consideration of a request to amend the historic district guidelines 2.1 development patterns, section 2.6 accessory patterns, section 3.1 design principles, and 4.5 guidelines for routes. Staff review, please.
Okay, so I'm gonna toss over to Matt Shelley, who is the city planner for the city.
Thank you.
Can you get closer to the microphone?
He thinks that you should get closer to the microphone. Why don't you sit over here for the remote members?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I haven't spoken yet. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I am Matt Shelley. I'm the Historic Preservation Administrator for the City of New Bern. And I'll go through our presentation here. Let's get the 2 pages up here at once. How much is that? It could be okay, I guess, but... Oh, let's do it that way. There we go. Okay. Let me just put the right side. There we go. All right. So, just as we did a few months ago, whenever we changed the historic district guidelines, the HPC first adopts it and then requests your review and comment as then it is passed on to the aldermen for their final approval. So this is now the current version of the guidelines, and in those guidelines there are a number of chapters, and the first chapter is a lot of the background and technical processes, and the very second chapter begins with what we call site and setting, and basically provides a little bit of a more big picture thing. I figured, being the Planning and Zoning Commission, you would appreciate a little bit more explanation than simply just putting the words out there and say, do you like it or not? So essentially the guidelines start out with the explaining concept of development patterns. And we see in the historic districts at least 3 and now 4 different development patterns. So the first one is what we call dense fabric. And dense fabric basically describes the downtown area. And as you can imagine, the downtown area is definitely a different character than the residential area. So the downtown area is described here briefly in 2 little paragraphs. The residential area we call tight weave because the houses tend to be somewhat close together, especially compared to more suburban developments. They're also closer to the street, and that's what makes that a historic characteristic. Then waterfront development is in the historic district, but it is now quite a bit different than either of the previous ones. So that one is just described as different from the other 2, and there are some different understandings later on in the guidelines related to those. So our proposal is we would like to add a 4th development pattern, and I'll go into that in a second. But at the moment, there are 3 specific guidelines for the various development patterns. First one is when you're in that development pattern, you maintain the established development pattern for the placement of new, what we call infill construction. And things should be similar to everything else on that block or in that area. Then secondly, there are areas within the historic districts where there may be vacant lots and non-conforming structures, which kind of weaken that overall historic character. So in those areas, preference should be given to contributing structures, which are the historic structures which contribute to the historic character. when defining the development pattern for infill construction. So you shouldn't be using that modern gas station or the modern apartment building as an example of how you are going to build your new building, but rather use the historic ones that are otherwise maybe a little farther away. Thirdly, the footprint, the scale, and the proportion of new construction should be in keeping with neighboring properties. And so for in general, it's not appropriate to construct a 3-story structure in an area that is dominated by 1-story structures. And we have a number of illustrations that go through all that as well. I won't go into that as much as show, here we have basically a figure ground representation of the 3 different patterns that I've been talking about. This area here is the downtown, as I'm sure you know. So this is Middle Street, and this is Craven, and this is Pollock. And you can see the buildings in this area are abutting each other side by side. They're right up to the sidewalk, as we know. They also are taller. You don't see that in this plan view, of course. The waterfront are these large buildings right along the waterfront, and they also have large parking areas around them. And then up at the top, the very tiny kind of almost rice grain pattern up here is the residential area. Now, one area that isn't actually described so well is this intervening area here, which is, I would probably call more of an institutional one. The county courthouse on both sides here, the Shriners, you have the Christ Church downtown, City Hall, the bank, etc., all, and several other churches all right in this area, kind of separating the 2 patterns. But also sprinkling in through, this is the library down here, so that's kind of down in that, as you know, in that kind of residential area. So anyway, in the PowerPoint, of course, this would just click up. So just an enlargement of the downtown area showing how close together those are. The fine grain area of the residential area. And then it's not just buildings, but it's also the lots. So now I'm getting all foggy, so I'm going to have to take that off for a second. So the downtown area has long, skinny lots, a lot of very long, skinny lots. Some are shorter, though. On the corners, they also get smaller. Of course, the waterfront is very large lots, and the institutional area is large lots. But the more fine-grained one actually has larger lots than you would think by the size of the actual structures. And that's because they have larger backyards. And many of them used for sheds and garages. And that's important as we move forward. We're going to talk now about this area up here. At the end of East Front Street and at the corner of Queen Street, currently 16 empty lots and 1 house that's been there for 10, 12 years now, standing alone. Some enlargement of that area there. I began to draw some of the setbacks and realized, wait a minute, I actually have the PUD plan. There are indeed 17 lots in this subdivision. 1 is on Queen Street, and so that one is kind of an outlier here, but the rest of the lots are long, narrow lots, and actually very narrow. And I have an enlargement here to show, because I didn't think I would be able to read it. Somewhere under 40 feet wide, generally. And almost, or sometimes a little more than 100 feet. So what is that, 4,000 square feet? This one's 3685, 4,000 square feet. So that is a major difference from mostly everywhere else. There are some exceptions. There are some even smaller lots in the historic district. But as a general rule, and that's what we're talking about in a development pattern as a general rule, these are different in that respect, but also, I'll go back again to the PUD plan. There's another major aspect, and that is that they actually have alleys behind them. As you may know, if you've driven down there to the waterfront, they have that almost little loop road that goes around. Well, that's really an alley for the main street down the middle. And so the alley makes the development of these lots much better and provides for all of the access and utilities and such to each of the properties that everywhere else in the city, or at least in the historic district, has to be provided from the front.
Do I understand that those alleys are wide enough for vehicles to travel?
Yes, these are, I think it's 20 feet there. Yeah, it's 20 foot wide, right of way, anyway. So, so as a result,
Is there going to be parking allowed on those alleys at all?
not on the alley as much as access to the lots for parking from the alley, and that's the major difference. So there will not be the need for a driveway coming from the front, crossing the sidewalk and going along the house, etc. People will just pull in from the back.
And that's very common in Washington DC, for example.
The alleys.
Yeah.
Yes, in many cities it is. And I
That
believe,
one structure, excuse me, not to interrupt, that one structure does have a rear load garage.
that's right, that's right. And so currently, and until these changes happen, there is one sentence in the guidebook that says that attached garages are not allowed in the historic districts, or not appropriate in the historic districts. So somehow that one got in. We don't know. That was, of course, back 2006 or 8 or something like that, so quite a while ago. And so because these lots will be using the rear for their access, it's different than everywhere else. So that has brought us to this point where we need to talk about that. Now, the reason that...
Garbage removal be able to be done from the rear?
I'm
Like
sorry?
the garbage and recyclables taken from the rear?
Yep, mhm, yes,
That would be
yep,
wonderful.
yep. So there won't be the trash cans out in the street or anything like that. So that PUD was a result of what was at that time popular in planning called neo-traditionalism, or new urbanism, but more neo-traditionalism, which these illustrations represent. I pulled off. And this one pulls up, it shows street trees, on-street parking, narrow streets, wide sidewalks, and no driveways. A terminated vista, this is part of a potentially larger project, so that end of that street has not yet been determined. But the idea is that it will be houses close together like this, 2.5 stories, kind of like this, or like these here, or like this here. So we've already started to get some applications for this, which is why we need to act on this soon. But the applications are a lot like this, with two levels of balconies, because with such a small site and such a narrow property, outdoor space is a premium, and so these balconies become very valuable for these people, or for the people who will be living there eventually. So to give you an idea that currently the driveways already separate houses in ways that are larger than will be happening on these. The setbacks for the PUD is 5 feet from the property line on both sides. So the houses could theoretically be only 10 feet apart from each other,
Oh,
with 5 feet on each property. So either you'd be sharing, if you had to have a driveway, you'd be sharing a 10-foot space for 2 properties. Or, as luckily we have the alleys in the back in order to provide access to the rear. So, these images are, of course, from New Bern, just showing you kind of the pattern and rhythm of the buildings down the street. Some of these are even still wider than the ones that are being proposed, because with the 40-foot wide, 40-foot wide lot, 10 feet of side yard, you're only 30 feet of building, maybe even 25 in some cases, because there were some high-shaped ones. So, again, seeing the driveway in one case, and then the driveway for the next one, that eats up 10 feet for each property.
You said a minute ago that you received you're receiving applications for, are you talking about that particular site, or are you talking about from other areas around?
No, just that subdivision.
Isn't that already subdivided for something
Yes.
similar?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So, but it's in the historic district, so it goes through historic district, Historic Preservation Commission review about the designs.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're allowed to build because they are legally subdivided lots, and they were subdivided back in 2006. So it's just now at the point where they're ready to propose buildings, and they need the design approval. So, but because many of those projects have the attached garages, that was going to be a problem. So, and as well they should have the attached garages, because I guess theoretically you could have a detached garage on the back of a very tiny lot, but then you end up with a very tiny house that would have to go basically straight up in order to get the amount of space that a modern household needs. So, all right, which is almost ridiculous. So anyway, this is a planned view of two of those. So I should have pointed out, this is now at the end of the left-hand side, and the alley is going around, curves around at the end of the subdivision and back out to Main Street here. So that's lot 16, and this is lot 14, and I'll show you those in a second. But you can see how they really are squeezed into that
Literally.
envelope. I mean, the driveway is 5 feet long, just because that's all the space that's left, or 6 feet long. This one is maybe 5 feet on one side and 12 feet on the other because of the angle. So,
Is that alleyway going to be designated as one way, or is it going to be two way?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, part of the key to that is it's private drive. That's not controlled by the city, so
Right.
that'll likely be controlled by a homeowner's agreement or or likewise. So, Matt, if I may, I have a question. So there's a good chance, because of the flood zone in this property, I think our base flood elevation over there is 9 currently, or with the new, so there's a good
This one
chance.
happens to be 8.
Okay, so 8. So there's a good chance we won't have any habitable space on the lower level. It may all be where the garage is on the lower. There'll be no habitable space. Everything will be up above that 8-foot mark.
I can show you how they've resolved that. So it's the ground level is about 8 feet to begin with, and the base
Is it
flood
8?
elevation's 8.
Okay.
But we of course have freeboard of 2 more feet, so that's 10. And then that is to the underside of the ductwork, really.
Right.
And the ductwork, and then the floor joists. So the actual floor is about 4 feet above the base flood elevation. So that almost all the designs start at 12 foot above sea level.
Okay.
All right. So here's, I can make these a little bigger. So I want to point out, this one, because it's got the alley on this end, it's essentially a corner building. And you'll see here the porch wraps around a little bit around this corner. This is the main entrance right here. They also have then a side porch as well. And then this one over here is not, it's a mid-block one, so they just have the porch on the front. And also here's the entrance, and that's then out to the sidewalk, which isn't shown here in this plan. So the
Can I
sidewalk.
ask a question, please?
Oh, sure.
Along Edgerton Drive, which is less than a block away, really, maybe a little more than a block. All 4 houses that face the Neuse River have parking underneath, just like these houses. Will they be in the same, considered the same as these because of their under-house parking?
Same development pattern. They could potentially, I suppose, but they're done. So it's not necessarily relevant. Yeah.
Well, she said that they're still under construction.
Well, yes. I mean, but the designs have been approved.
Permanent, yeah, they're permanent.
Yeah.
The permit is adopted, right?
So here's the elevations. So everyone online can see this too, because we're broadcasting, right? You guys can all see these?
And are you watching the presentation?
An email with it. And
You can't see it, we've got a PowerPoint we're following.
Oh, okay. So now we're on page 19 with the elevations.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't, if I had known, I would have helped you out a little bit. Okay, so on the top is that corner house. So the front is the upper left image, and you can see the entranceway on the right, and they have the double stacked balcony, or porches, I guess, on the front. And then when you look to the side, they have 2 gables on the side. And on the left-hand side of that upper right drawing, you can see the double stacked porches on the left with the steps going down to the street. And then you can also see the double stacked side porch as well in the middle of the building. So the brick area at the bottom, the foundation, is full of louvers for the water to pass through. And the floor level is at 12 feet. But you can see as you go all the way to the right-hand side of both of those drawings, that 12-foot line is about halfway through that doorway, because that doorway goes into the garage. So the garage is at ground level, of course, so you can drive your car in. And I'm guessing that is going to be about a 14-foot ceiling in that garage. Maybe 12 to 14 feet ceiling in that garage. So get some nice size equipment in there, I guess. So, or a lot of good storage. Then on the bottom drawings is that mid-block building, which on the left you see the front of the building, the front of the house, and the steps going up, and then there's no doorway straight away. You actually take a left-hand turn to get in the doorway, but you have 3 windows for the kitchen there, and that also is a double stacked porch area, so there's balcony over the front porch. And then when you look at the side elevation, you can see, now this is going to be 10 feet away from a neighbor, so there's not a lot of too much fancy stuff going on there, but there are some windows and things. And you can see the side of those 2, the front porch and the front balcony. But then you'll see out back, they also have a balcony or porch on top of their garage. So, all right. So just to give an idea, I kind of replicated the house. So the next slide replicated with a green line across the bottom, across it. The image on the right is that corner building. And then the second one from the left, or 2 over to the left from the corner, a little darker one, is that infill building. And then the space that's available for the other homes are shown with the lighter colored ones, which are just copies of the mid-block one. Sorry. So that gives you an idea of the spacing, how it's going to be closer together, but not entirely unreasonable. Not like 2 or 3 feet. At least will be 10 feet apart. So just to give you an idea.
Are these designs in any way dependent upon changes that you were requesting?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So in order for these designs to be adopted, we have to make the recommended change.
Well, yes and no. It's better this way. There is enough flexibility in the guidelines to explain how this should be allowed here to begin with already, but it takes a lot of explaining to do every time. So instead of doing that, we decided it was appropriate to do all that explaining in the adopted document, and so we just have to be able to say it's allowed according to that pattern.
So it would expedite those kind of
Yes,
building.
yes, and it makes it clear to the property owners, that it's allowed as opposed to thinking that it's not allowed.
Does staff have any recommendations on this adoption?
Oh, well, so I just wanted to lastly go over then the actual language that we're looking to adopt is now we're calling this the narrow stitch development pattern. It's unique to New Bern. It was introduced in 2007 as a planned unit development influenced by neo-traditional new urbanism. The lots are organized in long, narrow rows that front the street, and the spacing between structures is minimal, creating public facades with porches and steps at the sidewalk and private rear facades. A service alley located at the rear removes utility distribution, garbage collection, curb cuts, and driveways from the primary, what we call the front, the primary area of visual concern. Rear yards are minimal, if not completely absent, when the rear facade fronts the alley. So buildings within this development pattern have a very tight rhythm that is often vertically emphasized by the presence of multiple stories. And building massing and roofs typically consist of simple forms and side yard facades that are largely void of fenestration, windows, except for the occasional balcony. And the lot proportions coupled with the absence of sizable yard space makes it much more different than everywhere else, and often leads to a double porch and rooftop decks that create private outdoor spaces and capture surrounding views.
Is there any concern about water runoff on these impervious water? Gutter management?
The regulations allow building coverage of 60% in the historic districts, and these, even as tight as those are, the setbacks pretty much establish 40%.
The 5 foot.
Yes, the 5 and 10 foot. Yep, it's amazing. Well, plus there's all the little bits that don't actually fill out the building envelope. So.
Wow.
Have you gotten any feedback from fire and safety about these proposals, about the spacing?
No. So the PUD was approved by planning and zoning and the aldermen back in the day. So that isn't really our purview.
Right.
So in addition, we had some cleanup to do inside the rest of the guidelines. So specifically that thing about attached garages, we are now changing it from they're not appropriate in the historic districts to they're not appropriate in the tight weave development pattern, so in that residential one.
So you're specifying for that specific group? Okay.
Right. Because in the end, the waterfront development pattern may have parking garages, right? So technically you could consider that as an attached garage, so that would be another problem. So, and the same thing could happen even in the downtown area, I suppose. But anyway, the next one is 3.1 for design principles, another section of the guidelines. Talk about various other things, and then we're adding the narrow stitch development pattern creates a strong rhythm of repeated narrow front facades that create a hard edge at the streetscape. Steps from each structure extend to the sidewalk in series, beginning in an upper landing above design flood elevation and descending to meet the shape of the terrain below. Full width porches that compensate for the lack of yard space, accentuate facades, and animate otherwise planar building forms. And then lastly, we had a little bit of a concern about people just putting decks on their roofs, especially there right at the river. So in the narrow stitch development pattern, provide pitched roofs free of observation platforms above the highest living floor of structures. So we also get pitched roofs without platforms.
And we deal with the slope of the pitch or the slope elsewhere in the guidelines, correct?
That's pretty much left to the design style.
But we have some minimums, is that correct? No?
I don't think I've seen minimums.
Okay.
As in like 3 and 12
Yeah, 3,
or
12,
anything
6,
like
12,
that.
something like that, okay.
Yeah.
Some of the
So-
other historical homes have these platforms.
Yeah, Widow's Walk, so.
Right,
That's what we
right.
call
That
it.
was mentioned, but we knew that no one was going to actually do a widow's walk. They were going to put out party decks, and it wasn't going to look anything like a widow's walk. So,
Are there any
yes.
members present that have any other questions?
Well, is that the
That's
end of
it.
the presentation, Matt? Okay.
Yeah.
That's the last item.
Is this the same person developing both these, or are they two separate people?
Those two that I showed were the same person. But there are several owners in that area.
I would like to remind the public that the questions are from members of the board at this point. And I'm most interested if you have any questions. You are the one member that I know of who has a historic home.
Yeah, and I used to live in Queens Point and look at those vacant lots.
Okay.
I sort of got myself very familiar with that development a long time back, and it's really fairly straightforward.
Do you have any objections to these proposals that are before us?
No, I think it just clarifies things.
Okay. Marcus or Sonny, do you have anything to add?
No, I was going to ask what prompted this, but that question was answered during the course of the presentation.
Very well. Are there any other questions? Any second thoughts? Now, the development services, what does the planning department has reviewed this? I didn't see a recommendation from
Yeah, so Matt has been working, I believe, with a small group of the HPC to come to get these
That's right.
principles together. And also just a quick reminder, we're gonna be making a recommendation
This
to
is
the
a
Board of
recommendation
Aldermen.
because this is a
Yes.
change in the land use ordinance.
Yeah, so we're not voting on the planned unit development.
No, we're going to be
It's the
voting whether or not
language.
to make a recommendation for or against
Yes.
this change in the land use
Yeah,
ordinance.
exactly. So that was that was an example of what
So just
this would
this
allow
and that.
or help to allow, since I believe it's already allowed right now, right? It would just be difficult to explain.
That's right.
So since Matt came up with it and he's been working with the HBC, then we are recommending approval to the Board of Aldermen.
Okay. At this point, I believe that I would like to entertain a motion to recommend approval of the changes.
Well, do we need to see if we have any public comment?
I don't know if this is a subject of public comment, but at this point, I'm willing to, essentially, the applicant has presented his thing. Now the public is is allowed to ask any questions for us to approve such changes. Have you heard them? Do any members of the public wish to address this board against the recommended changes? Having heard none, at this point, I would like to entertain a motion to recommend to the Board of Aldermen the request to amend the historic district guidelines as proposed to us, sections 2.1, 2.6, 3.1, and 4.5. Do we have such motion?
I'll move that we recommend that we approve it.
We have a motion to move forward with the adoption of a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen as such. Is that
Second.
seconded? We have a motion and then seconded. At this point, I would like to hear a roll call of votes, please. Nadia?
Okay, Don Black,
Yes.
Raymond Mason,
Yes.
Ann Scout,
Ann?
Yes.
Marshall Ballard.
Yes.
Yes.
Margie Dunn,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Sonny Alusa.
Yes,
Motion passes.
The motion passes unanimously. Now on to item 3 on the agenda. Are there any members of this board that wishes to make any comments? First, let's ask our remote members. Ann, do you have any comments to make?
I'm good.
Sonny?
I just want to thank everybody that made this possible, that Ann and I and everyone else who doesn't want to venture out still can be a part of this board, and thank you.
So noted, thank you. And thank you for attending by telephone. And Marshall? Marcus? Okay.
Yes.
Very good. At this point, we've covered all items on the agenda. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is that motion seconded?
Second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yep, Don Black,
Yes?
Raymond Mason,
Yes.
Ann Scout,
Yes.
Marshall Ballard,
Yes.
Margie Dunn,
Yes.
Marcus Simmons,
Yes.
Travis Oakley,
Yes.
Sonny Alusa.
Yes.
Motion